Hi everyone, Miss Heckman here. Today we are going to talk about signal transmission. So I think we've talked about this before. Cells have to communicate with each other so they can be on the same page, and so our body reacts really as a whole unit to different things rather than each individual cell doing its own thing in our own bodies. So signal transmission is super important, and it is how cells actually communicate. So there is tons of millions of different signal transmission pathways that we could talk about, but today we are going to talk about the one that happens when our body releases epinephrine or when we have an adrenaline rush. So I put these pictures of these people jumping off a cliff because I promise you their body is releasing a ton of epinephrine right now, and I'm pretty sure those backpacks on there are parachutes, so the base jumpers are jumping with parachutes. They just haven't released yet. So we are talking about epinephrine. So when we talk about signal transmission, there are really two types of signal transmission. So there's intercellular and intracellular. So intercellular is going to be between two different cells. So one cell sending a signal to another cell. Then we have intracellular, and that's signaling that's happening within one individual cell. So I always remember intercellular because like if you drive on the interstate, it can take you from one state to another state. You don't have to stay in Oregon when you drive on the interstate. So today we are looking at two different epinephrine pathways. So in one case, when epinephrine is released, it will bind and change the cell function of a cell. So it will do that by creating a pathway that results in the production of phosphorylase, and phosphorylase will break down glycogen to make glucose. The other pathway actually causes gene expression. So sometimes the body or the cell doesn't have the tools it needs ready to go to get glucose. So in this situation, we're going to change gene expression. So epinephrine is going to result in the creation of a transcription factor called CREB, and that transcription factor is going to actually bind to our DNA, and through transcription and translation, make the protein that we need to break down glycogen into glucose. So there's more than one pathway that can happen in this situation. We have epinephrine, that's this guy over here, and when we do something crazy, or maybe get in a car accident, or almost get in a car accident, like have you ever slammed on your brakes and then your heart rate increases and you get all shaky and you're hyper alert, all of that is caused by adrenaline. So when our adrenal gland releases adrenaline, which is made up of epinephrine, which is right here, that epinephrine goes into our liver. And when it goes into our liver, glucose is released. So now we have all this glucose, we have extra energy going into our sugar for us to absorb and use, and really that glucose will get absorbed into our cells and we will use it. So what we're looking at today is how that epinephrine that was up here, let's say this is our epinephrine, how does it get into our cells and end up making us make that glucose. This is going to be my glucose. And sometimes it doesn't only get into our cells, it leaves a pathway that gets all the way into the nucleus where we're going to be working with our DNA. So that's what we're going to look at today. So this is our main pathway for epinephrine. So a few things I want to talk about first. Up here, this is outside of the cell. So this light blue is outside the cell within our bodies, and that's where the epinephrine signal is coming from. So it left the adrenal gland and is in this space out here. And then inside, everything that's happening in here, that is inside the cell. And this guy right here, that is our cell membrane. So what happens is something freaky happens, or we go skydiving and our body releases adrenaline, and the epinephrine and adrenaline comes right here and binds to a receptor. So this receptor is just sitting in the cell membrane, sticking out with the perfect shape for epinephrine to fit in it. So it's like any other molecule isn't going to bind there. It has to be that exact shape of epinephrine. So that happens, the receptor binds the epinephrine, which actually results in it changing shape and releasing energy that comes over here to activate a different protein. And then with that extra energy in this protein, it turns into an enzyme that makes, with more energy, this thing right here called CAMP. It's cyclic AMP or CAMP, whatever you prefer to call it. And that is an energy molecule very made up similarly to ATP, but instead of that triphosphate, it's going to be monophosphate. So that's not super important, just know it's an energy molecule. So cyclic AMP is going to bind to another protein called a protein kinase. So we don't have an actual picture of it, but let's just say, oh look, here it is. It can be any shape or thing you want. It's protein kinase. It's been activated. And then that is going to activate phosphorylase. So that's the next one on the list. Phosphorylase is activated. So once phosphorylase is activated, phosphorylase can actually come over here to the glycogen that's being stored in our liver, and it has the ability to break all that glycogen down into individual glucose molecules, and those are released into our bloodstream for our other cells to absorb. So, wow, that was a lot. You're probably thinking, why does it have to be so many steps? It's almost like a Rube Goldberg machine, you know, those things where the dominoes fall down and then the ball rolls down the toilet paper roll and then a candle gets lit and whatever happens, you know, it's like this chain reaction to get a simple event. But because it works this way, it actually gives the body a lot more control, because there are many steps where it could be stopped and different things could bind if it didn't need to happen, and at the same time it allows the body to make a ton of glucose all at once, because when one epinephrine binds, it's not a single signal pathway like it's showing here. So all of these reactions could actually have a ton of arrows pointing in every different direction, because it's happening more than once all at the same time. So one epinephrine could literally lead to billions of glucose molecules being released. So that's why it works that way. With every chain reaction, more and more reactions start, and that means we have plenty of glucose to get that adrenaline rush feeling happening. So that is one way that this can happen, and I actually don't have a good picture of the other way, but I can sort of explain to you right now. Basically, it's right around here. Instead of activating phosphorylase kinase, something else happens, and this guy activates this molecule called CREB. I am not very good at writing with this pen. CREB is actually going to go into the nucleus and bind onto our DNA, and that'll be transcribed into messenger RNA, which will be translated into a protein, and then that protein will be released and go over to the glycogen and break that into glucose. So I think it's just more important that you guys understand that there's more than one pathway that can result in the same circumstances or the same response, basically. So it's not always one way to get that glucose. All right, and that's all you guys need to know, but I just love this picture. I think it's kind of crazy. Remember that there's a ton of different signaling pathways happening in your body all of the time, and your cells have a lot of things moving from point A to point B and communicating with each other, and I think that this is pretty. So don't memorize it, don't draw it, don't do anything with it, just appreciate it for what it is, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!